how likely a 24 or 48-hour extension, how likely a 1-week extension, or, put it the other way, a weekend close down of the government, a week-long close down of the government?
I think at this point, there are a couple different scenarios we're looking at when we look out for the rest of the day. I think either they come to an agreement and they pass a quick, very short-term, sort of clean extension in order to give them time to write the legislative language and sort of settle it for the rest of the year, which will take us through September, what's left of the year.
Only, yeah.
So we still have to get to do this all over again for next year's budget. So it'll either be that, and that'll be sort of the good news, avoiding the shutdown, or they will, in fact, not reach a deal, and the government will shut down at midnight tonight. And in that case, how long will it last? I mean, a lot of people think that it will be sort of like a mini shutdown, maybe just over the weekend or just a few days. The idea being that will allow sort of Tea Party infused members of the Republican House to say, we did it, we took a stand, and it'll be easier to cut the deal after that. You never know how it actually ends up playing out. But I think that most people are betting either they'll work it out or it'll be a short-term shutdown.
Right.
I can see a case for a shot across the bow type of shutdown in which the Republicans say, we really are serious. We really are willing to shut down the government. We don't want there to be terribly serious consequences, certainly not for the economy. And we don't really want to see a lot of people out of work and all of the effects of that. But we are willing to have a symbolic shutdown over the weekend, ruin the Cherry Blossom Festival Parade, ruin the weekend for hundreds of thousands of people who were planning to come here for this spring event. But that's a small and symbolic matter. They would be willing to have a little bloodying of the noses on both parties' parts in order to send that shot across the bow and say, in the bigger negotiations to come on 2012 and beyond, and we've got much to talk about in terms of the entire fiscal house of the federal government, they want to show seriousness by being willing to push it over the brink tonight.
There also could be some who feel like if they let off the steam now, get this done, scratch this itch, shut the government down for a couple of days, then later, when we have to lift the debt ceiling, when we have really big fights over the 2012 budget, that at least they would have marked this box and they would have used the tactic and have it out of their system. The problem is these things are very unpredictable, because you can maybe say we'll do it for a couple of days, but what if Boehner can't persuade? Once they've shut the government down, what if he can't bring them back to the table? What if the Democrats decide they start to win in the who gets blamed fallout from it, and they decide maybe we ought to extend it a little bit more and inflict more pain on the Republicans? You just never know how these things are going to play out. They didn't know in 1995. They learned a lot of lessons from there. They claim we've got a brand new environment now and new lessons will be learned. Well, we don't know what they are. So it would be a very risky venture, even if they thought, well, we're just going to do it, as Rob said, just to make a point.
There was a pep rally kind of an atmosphere on Capitol Hill this week. The Republicans brought out the new budget for 2012, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. But when they brought that out, there was a tremendous kind of sense of excitement among conservatives about that 2012 budget, and also about the idea of standing tough on these budget negotiations. And I think that with this new generation, with people who were not around in 1995, who believe that everything has changed and that the country is very much more with them now because of the Tea Party movement and because of the election of 2010, that they really stand to increase their power, to enrich their own hand in these negotiations by pushing a little harder than anyone ever has before. And I think we've reached the point now where that means a shutdown.
It's interesting because if you talk to the Tea Party, they view shutdown as a political win. The conventional wisdom for Republicans, the conventional wisdom in Washington has been that a shutdown will more likely benefit President Obama. Most of that's based on what happened in 1995, where President Clinton came out the winner in that politically. However, I think what Jean says is a really important point, which is we just don't know how it will play out, whether each of the parties will be seen as reasonable, who will be seen as obstinate, and there's. Last time in 1995, a lot of the views on this were shaped because Newt Gingrich complained about where he was seated on Air Force One on a trip back from Israel for the funeral, and that ended up changing public debate overnight about he was viewed as a whiner and a crybaby, and President Clinton came out ahead. Now, we don't know what the corollary, if there will be a corollary to that this time, will be.
Could these policy questions that Republicans are pushing for be game changers, Ron?
I think that is the weakness in their argument, is that it is such a narrow gap on money. And it is clear that the Republicans, while they're not getting all the cuts they want, the Democrats have moved a great distance toward the original goalposts that the Republicans set up.
They claim 70% of the way.
That's right. And there's a case to be made for that. Of course, it all depends on exactly which number and which percentage and which baseline you're using. But there is a case to be made. The Democrats have already moved as far as you would expect them to move on the money.